In this week's the news, we're not being racist, says government as it removes Māori words from school books. Farm greenhouse emissions set to drop. On paper. Government determined to make local infrastructure worse. And 80 years on from World War II, what have we learned? All that and more on this week's the news. Hello there, kia ora, I'm Paul, and this episode's been cleared for human consumption by 8 out of 10 paleontologists. Education Minister Erica Stanford, seen here demonstrating how best to hide books with scary words she doesn't like, has come under fire this week for her decision to remove Onu Kupu Māori from an early reader book because she found them too confusing. While experts have said that Te Reo Māori uses the same phonetics as English and that children with bilingual skills tend to do better in long-term education and critical thinking, Stanford stood by her action saying, "We were elected on a wave of racist dog whistles, and we stand by that. No matter what age someone is, we won't let the word marae hurt anyone ever again." A war of words has broken out between New Zealand Prime Minister Christopher Luxon, seen here happy there's no joke accompanying this picture, and the Israeli government, as Parliament this week debated the need to recognise Palestinian statehood and look at sanctions for the state currently oppressing Palestinians, after Luxon said Netanyahu had, quote, lost the plot when he saw, quote, utterly appalling bombings of Gaza. In response, Israel's Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, clearly unaware of the attack-apteryx, or attacteryx as it's been dubbed, claimed New Zealand's biggest threat was a possum, so how could the country possibly know what it was like to have a group of starved neighbours, which have been systematically targeted for decades by an overpowered aggressor with international weapons resources and access control for foreign aid, with a history of disproportionate responses that's never had to face repercussions for its actions, scaring them from so close by. Green Party co-leader Chloe Schwarbrick, seen here as confused as the rest of us at the ramblings of the coalition MPs, faced sanctions in Parliament this week while seeking sanctions for Israel after calling for opposition MPs to grow a spine on the issue. Speaker of the House Jerry Brownley ignored the 61 other times the term spineless had been entered into Hansard before demanding an apology, which Schwarbrick refused, leading for her removal and eventual naming. Said Brownley, "As someone who hasn't had a spine in years, I felt personally attacked by this comment." New Zealand's emissions outputs are set to drop. On paper, as new emissions reporting laws come into effect that mean 3 of the 5 largest emitters in the country no longer have to report on the topic after the government changed compulsory reporting for the farming sector, which means the companies responsible for half of all our emissions no longer need to report, said Environment Minister Penny Simmons, seen here wondering if she had heard that right, that she's the Environment Minister. We all know the way to fix a problem is to pretend it doesn't exist, and with this new policy in place, that'll be even easier to do now. The government and police are playing the blame game with each other this week after a new report from Treasury ranked the police last in their ability to manage their assets. Some police assets, such as vehicles, weapons and a boat, are up to 20 years out of date, and the police have said that the reduction of 170 back-office room rolls to provide $50 million in tax cuts for landlords created the issue by removing expertise in resilience, sustainability and portfolio-specific asset management. While Police Minister Mark Mitchell, seen here trying out the Macarena, said, I blame Labour. Teachers are set to strike next week in what government ministers are calling an annual political stunt. During negotiations, the government offered teachers just a 1% pay rise, which is below the inflation rate, so is considered by many as a real terms pay cut. Said the Teachers Association, "We know from experience that even kids who need the most help to understand something can get there with the right tools and effort to see challenges in a new light. It's sad our government ministers can't seem to do the same by constantly offering us the same thing and expecting us to change." Nurses are also set to strike again next week with another below-inflation pay offer. Health Minister Simeon Brown, seen here about to drop the worst rap album of 2025, has claimed that this is using patients as a bargaining tool, while nurses have pointed out that the government is threatening patients as a bargaining tool. Local Government Minister Simon Watts, seen here standing in front of all the books he thinks local libraries should be budgeted to buy in the future, says he's close to finishing his work on new rules that would force councils to instigate rate caps in a move experts have called about as stupid as it's possible to get if you want local government to do its job. Restricted income options for councils amid a growth phase the country is currently seeing will limit the ability of councils to provide for that growth while maintaining core services and facilities. Said Watts of the change, "Sure, we canned 3 waters without an alternative, which drove up costs for councils, and international inflation rates on infrastructure costs have skyrocketed over the past decade, up to 10 times that of domestic inflation. But whoever funds the taxpayer union seems to think this is a good idea, and who are we to argue with that logic? Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, seen here wondering when we elected Dr. Evil as Prime Minister, visited Queenstown this week for the annual meeting between leaders of our two countries. The event was considered a masterclass in awkwardness, from Luxon's aborted hongi to hug transition, staged media stand-ups where only 6 pre-selected questions were asked, a $27,000 helicopter trip up a snow-covered mountain to have an uncomfortable conversation about pavlova that Australian media weren't given access to, and closing down the luge for half an hour so Luxon could go for a ride. Said a spokesperson for the Prime Minister, "This meeting is a great show of the special relationship between our two countries with a long shared history. And no, expensive private helicopter rides for social media clout for us is not out of touch. Why would you say something so mean?" Rail Minister Winston Peters, seen here telling the CRL boss to be quiet and listen to his elders, caused a bit of a scene last week at the launch of Auckland's new rail line, the City Rail Link, by refusing to wear high-vis gear, mandatory for all people on the test run. Peters claimed he wasn't elected to wear things like that. He was there to save the country money, with bystanders unsure how not wearing the vest would achieve that. Peters ultimately relented and wore the vest, saying afterwards, "Sure, it brings out my eyes, but I make sure I make enough noise that everyone can see me without it." The government is set to shatter a record it set just last year, with the country on track to have its highest ever number of business liquidations recorded in 2025. 2024 saw a 10-year high in the number of business liquidations of about 2,500, and data for this year shows a 12% increase on the same time last year. According to financial experts, the most hard-hit industries have been construction and hospitality, driven by a massive reduction in builds as the government cancelled a number of planned housing projects, and economic woes caused by rising affordability issues, high unemployment rates, large-scale migration away from the country, and high interest rates. Said the Prime Minister, "Yes, times are tough for those of you who can't afford a helicopter to go up a mountain to goop around about pavlova, and we really feel for those plebs." The public has been advised to not collect or consume shellfish from the Bay of Plenty coast between Whakatane and Mount Maunganui due to the presence of a toxin which may cause the shellfish to become poisonous. A New Zealand food safety spokesperson has said they believe cooking the shellfish would not remove the risk. When asked where the toxins have come from, they said, "There's a couple of really toxic community Facebook pages coming out of Tauranga, full of racism and disinformation. One actually run by a candidate in this year's local body election. So we think that's probably what's responsible." And finally, this week marks the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II, when Japan surrendered to Allied forces after the devastating use of 2 atomic bombs. About 140,000 New Zealanders fought during World War II, with 12,000 losing their lives, and today only 69 veterans are still alive. A spokesperson for the Veterans Affairs Office has said, "It's an important day for us to all mark, to remember the human cost of fighting fascism and tyranny across the globe, and to commemorate all that we've lost. And we still believe the best thing you can do is punch a fucking Nazi in the face when you get the chance. It's just unfortunate that the number of chances you get seems to be increasing lately." Right, and that's it for this week's The News. Thanks again for tuning in and for all the support during the week. Live long, prosper, and we'll catch you all next time. Hey, thanks for checking out today's video. Make sure you like, share, subscribe so you get more updates as we go along. We deal with these guys for the rest of the year.